From the best-selling Christian Heroes Then and Now series, YWAM Publishing presents George Müller, The Guardian of Bristol's Orphans, by Janet and Geoff Benge. Read for you by Tim Gregory. For information about other titles in this outstanding series, please visit our website at ywampublishing.com or call us at 800-922-2143. Chapter 1. A Common Thief. Crash! A flower pot toppled over onto the sidewalk beneath George Müller as he stretched his foot out to reach the ground. George was climbing out the back window of the inn where he had been staying, and when he heard the crash, he froze. After he was satisfied no one had heard him, he lowered one foot softly onto the cobbled pavement, then the other. 16-year-old George pulled his tall, lanky body up to its full height and looked around. "Good," he muttered to himself under his breath. "I'm safe. Now, to get out of here." A moment later, George realized he'd spoken too soon. Police officers appeared at either end of the street and began running towards him. George swung around, desperately looking for some way to escape, but there was none. Before he knew it, the strong hands of a policeman had grabbed his arm and were dragging him roughly along the cobblestone street in the direction of the jail. An hour later, George was waiting for his name to be called. The backless wooden bench he sat on was hard and uncomfortable, and the chains around his slender wrists and ankles bit at his flesh. As he waited, George thought about how shocked his father would be to see him in shackles. Then again, his father probably wouldn't be any more shocked than George was right then. George had done dishonest things many times before, but this was the first time he'd been caught. That is, the first time he'd been caught by the police. When he was 10 years old, he'd been caught by his father, and it turned out to be a painful and humiliating experience. His father, Johann Müller, was a tax collector for the Prussian government, and he often left large sums of money in the house. Mr. Müller often complained that small amounts of this money were missing, but George, like his younger brother, passionately declared he knew nothing about it. One day George was called into his father's office, where his father had laid a trap for him. Mr. Müller had counted out a number of coins and left them on the corner of his desk. When George arrived at the office, his father pretended he needed to go into another room. Alone in the office, George saw the pile of coins on his father's desk and thought of all the wonderful things he could do with the money. It seemed such a shame to put all of the coins into the official black leather pouch his father used for collecting tax money and hand the money over to some government official. So George crept up to the desk and quietly lifted 3 coins from the top of the pile. Who would miss them? George quickly dropped the coins into his right sock. When Johann Müller returned to the office, much to George's dismay, he looked straight at the pile of coins. "How strange," he said in a low, constrained voice George had come to fear. "I thought there were more coins there than that. Let me count them." George could feel his cheeks becoming hot and flushed. His heart began to race. The cold coins pressed against his ankle inside his sock. "Empty your pockets," said Mr. Müller evenly, looking his son in the eye. "But, Papa," George began and then thought better of it. Obediently, he emptied his pockets onto the desk. There were a quill nib, 3 glass marbles, and a foot-long piece of string. George turned his pockets inside out so that his father could see that they were empty. "Now, take off your shirt." George was horrified. How far would his father go before he believed his oldest son? "And your pants." George began to fret. Things were not looking good. If his father found the coins in his sock, George would be beaten. And from previous experience, George knew that a boy without his pants on made an especially good target. "Now, your socks," continued his father in a determined voice. George inched them off his feet, first the left and then the right, being careful to gather the coins in such a way that they wouldn't clink together. "Hand them over," demanded his father.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?